Sharkey was a 26-year-old hair and skin consultant from Houston, Texas, and prior to her death, things were really looking good for Alexis. Along with her 20,000 followers on Instagram and her reach of over 50,000 users on TikTok, Alexis had very recently partnered with Monats, an MLM that uses affiliates to sell beauty products in return for a commission. But according to Alexis's sister, she hated people labeling her as an influencer and instead preferred to use the term mentor on her own Instagram page. However, the company that Alexis was working for was quickly approaching $1 billion in revenue with a customer base of over 2 million people. And with their profits quickly increasing, Monat had recently come under fire for being an unashamed pyramid scheme alongside claims its products were causing hair loss, skin irritation, and a plethora of other health issues. And this resulted in a slew of lawsuits stretching back to as early as 2015. And in fact, in September 2020, Monat signed an agreement with the Florida Attorney General promising to refund $82,782 to customers who experienced adverse effects. And you know, it's unclear as to how much Alexis was actually earning from her partnership with Monat, but she did post a picture to her Instagram page back in 2014 holding an oversized $10,000 check she was awarded as a part of Monat's Dream Bigger promotion. The check displayed Alexis's maiden name of Robinault, which she would keep until December 2019 when she would marry her future husband, Tom Sharkey. Alexis met 49-year-old Tom in Odessa, Texas, while they were both working in a restaurant called Twin Peaks. Alexis was going through a tough breakup with an ex-fiancé, and Tom was an available shoulder to cry on. The pair clicked almost immediately, getting engaged in June 2019 and marrying just 6 months later in December. And you know, when you think of a beauty and cosmetics influencer's wedding, you would assume that it would be grand, bold, and full of, glamour and over-the-top everything. However, surprisingly, Alexis and Tom opted for a low-key courthouse wedding, and the cost for these things can be as little as $50, as opposed to the thousands of dollars that people think that they need to spend on a typical marriage. Despite that, though, the couple appeared very much in love. Tom sharing photos of his bride with the caption, "Never seen or felt such beauty. You are my world." And to Alexis's followers, the influencer had it all: a booming professional mentorship, a loving relationship, and the world at her feet. But beneath the surface, there were some worrying signs. Now, while the 23-year age gap worried some friends of Alexis's because she was 26 and he was 49, there were other concerning factors surrounding the 49-year-old bodybuilder. There was the matter of Tom's past. He'd been married before and had a long history of complaints of psychological and physical abuse. And according to 2008 court transcripts, he was accused of sending naked photos of his ex-wife to her mailbox to intimidate and humiliate her. And even at the court hearing, Tom's own family members testified against him and said that Tom has undergone a significant change to his mental and emotional condition, often threatening suicide to get his way in arguments and doing untold damage to the children in the process. Tom, however, maintains that he is no longer that person from his first marriage and has shown a determined outpouring of love on social media over his now deceased wife. This has been met with a barrage of death threats after news broke of his wife's death, and with many people following the case convinced that Tom is behind the tragedy. Now, the day before Alexis disappeared, she spent Thanksgiving with a friend instead of her own husband. Now, normally, when you're in a loving and healthy relationship, you celebrate the holiday with family or your husband if you don't have one. But recent marital tensions saw her choose to be with friend Tanya Ricardo for the night. And on that night, she'd confided to her friend that she was growing increasingly worried about her husband. Earlier, she'd explained how on a trip to Marfa, Texas, last month, Tom had become violent, striking her several times during various arguments. And this was all coupled with very nasty text messages that Tom sent her, and Alexis showed all of this to her friends. She would often describe Tom as controlling, manipulative, and occasionally violent. But most concerning of all was Alexis recounting how, on many occasions, Tom had choked her to the point of unconsciousness. Blacking out, Alexis would later wake up on the bathroom floor, confused and terrified of how she got there and what happened while she was blacked out. So yeah, the tension in her marriage with Tom was taking its toll. Alexis told her friends that she had been having problems in the marriage and she was considering filing for a divorce. She mentioned that despite the fact that they were still living in the same apartment, they were practically separated and it was getting worse by the day. And this difficult period also manifested in her social media activity, with friends and followers noticing that in the weeks leading up to her death, her previously 4 times a day posting schedule started to become more spaced out and sporadic. However, after spending Thanksgiving with her friends, Alexis returned home. And unfortunately, that would be the last day that anyone would see her alive. Because on 6 p.m. on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, Alexis's friend Tanya called and she tried to organize movie plans with her. But when she called, the call went to voicemail, which was unusual for Alexis, who basically lived on her phone. And we all know how, influencers are. They're constantly, checking Instagram, checking the notifications, whether it be on Twitter, YouTube, etc. But yeah, it was then that Tanya opened Instagram to see if Alexis had been recently active. However, to Tanya's surprise, there hadn't been an update for over 12 hours. And it turns out that this was the biggest gap between posts since Alexis actually joined Instagram. So Tanya got the feeling that something was wrong. Tom, Alexis's husband, would later then tell the media that Alexis left their apartment on Friday night and he was concerned that she shouldn't be driving while under the influence. And he didn't bother to elaborate and give more specific details as to when, why, and how she left the apartment. But many people are already thinking that he's just trying to create an alibi for later by saying that she left the apartment drunk, so that he can have an excuse just in case the police start investigating him for this potential murder. Despite the circumstances though, when she hadn't been heard from in over 24 hours, Tom began reaching out to Sharkey's friends and family members, asking them if they had seen her. What I found strange though is that Tom never contacted the police over his wife's disappearance. And it was actually Tanya, her friend Tanya, who actually filled out a missing persons report after not hearing from her and noticing the length of her social media absence. And it's kind of funny how in this modern age with social media, if you have a friend who doesn't post for a certain amount of time, you start to get worried, that they might be dead. The next morning though, less than 24 hours after Alexis was reported missing, a garbage man who was, just going around the neighborhoods collecting garbage was driving along Red Hall Lane near Houston's North Elridge Parkway when he noticed a pair of legs sticking out of, some random bushes on the side of the road. And at first glance, the driver assumed that he had spotted a discarded mannequin and was slightly unnerved by the discovery. So he kept driving and opted to instead phone his boss and inform him of what he had just seen on the side of the road. Now, Supervisor John Richardson, who's like the boss of the garbage men in that area, went back to the scene with the garbage man who had spotted the mannequin. And when they went back to the area to investigate and they got closer, they quickly realized that they were not looking at a mannequin, and they were in fact looking at the naked, dead body of a young woman in her 20s. And after that, the pair immediately called 911 to report the body. Now, upon examination of Alexis's body, the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences could find no visible injuries or wounds on her body, nor could they determine a cause of death. And as I'm recording this, we're still waiting on the results of the autopsy and toxicology report. What I found peculiar though is that the morgue, the place that is holding Alexis's body, changed her official next of kin from her husband, Tom, to her parents, something that's only done when the next of kin is a person of interest in a criminal case. Lead homicide detective Ricardo Rivera has not yet ruled out foul play based on the fact that there was no attempt to hide or conceal the body. He stated that generally, when you find a dumped body with no injuries, it's the result of an overdose and a panicked decision by another party to discard the evidence. And now, while forensic and DNA specialists examine the scene for clues as to what happened, detectives on this case are anxiously waiting autopsy and pharmacology reports to see.
Hi, everybody. It's True Crime Alert. I just wanted to bring you this breaking news. This is Alexis Sharkey. Her death was officially determined a homicide by strangulation. And here is the update. Her husband was always considered a suspect, but he had never really been picked up, or even, I don't know how many interviews he did, saying he did a couple of interviews with the police, but I'm not sure. I can't substantiate that. But anyway, here's the update. Her husband was wanted in connection to death of social media star Alexis Sharkey, found dead in Fort Myers. And cause of death was strangulation. Now, the officers went to serve a search warrant on him. And this is about her husband. A man wanted in connection to the death of his wife and social media star Alexis Sharkey Robineau has been found dead of apparent suicide. So the marshals confirmed to Wink News, that's where this came from, that Sharkey was wanted for his wife's murder and was staying with his daughter in South Fort Myers. The death of the Houston social media star had been ruled a homicide back in January, 2 months after her body was found in roadside bushes. Alexis Sharkey, 26, died by strangulation. Though no wounds were visible on her body, the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences said in a statement. A city employee found her body on November 28th, about 3 miles from her apartment. She was seen alive the night before. And I think she was telling her friends that he used to choke her out. And they were having fights over this because he would strangle her until she passed out, and then she would wake up on the bathroom floor and wonder what happened. So they were already on the skids, her and her husband. Alexis Sharkey, who the Chronicle reported occasionally went by her maiden name of Robineau, garnered a sizable Instagram following by showing off beauty products. She identified herself as a mentor for Monat, a marketing company that sells hair and skincare products. Now, we all know what happened with Monat. On Tuesday, October 5th, U.S. Marshals with the Florida Caribbean Regional Fugitive Task Force went to the home of her husband, Tom Sharkey. Marshals confirmed to Wink News that Sharkey was wanted for his wife's murder and was staying with his daughter in Fort Myers. Law enforcement knocked on the door of the home and announcing themselves, and his daughter and her boyfriend came out. And after his daughter and boyfriend came outside, that's when marshals say Sharkey shot and killed himself inside the home. Okay, you guys, I don't know about you, but I knew he did it. It just seemed to me like he did it from the get-go. For one, they weren't getting along. And two, after she died, he would not even give her body to her mother so that she could bury her in a different state. And that's why the medical examiner's office switched Alexis Sharkey's next of kin from that of her husband to her parents, so that her mother could claim the body and give her a proper burial and memorial. So he was kind of a sad excuse for a man from square one. You know, he had already done this kind of domestic abuse to his ex, and then he started pulling it on Alexis. And she was quite a bit younger than him, but she put up with it for a while, but there was already a lot of cracks showing in the foundation of this relationship before we ever got to this point. So I think he was probably pretty manipulative and didn't like the fact that they were splitting up. She had already asked for a divorce. Okay, guys, this is what I have for the update. Thanks for joining me, and we will see you on the next one. Bye for now.